My family lied about being sick and skipped my son's birthday. Then I closed our joint account, exposed their vacation scam. Family didn't come to my child's birthday party because they are all sick, Dad said on the phone. I agreed, and we celebrated without them. Later, my sister posted a photo from vacation, family together. So, I closed the joint account, and now they begged. My son's birthday fell on a Saturday that year. We've been planning it for a while. Nothing fancy, just a backyard setup, a rented bounce house, a cake with dinosaurs on it, and enough balloons to make it feel special. He was turning 7, and he'd been counting down for weeks. Every night he asked if Grandma and Grandpa were coming, and of course, I told him they were. I really believed they would. That morning, we were still setting up when I called my dad. It was getting late. He picked up and said they couldn't make it. Everyone was sick. He said some kind of bug. We all got it. That was all he gave me. No details, no apology, just that. I told him I understood, hung up, and didn't mention it to my son. He eventually found out. When the cake came out and the only people around were my wife's sister and her husband, he kept looking around like someone was late. Then he quietly asked me if his cousin was coming. I told him she might be on her way. But deep down, I already knew. After everything was cleaned up and our guests had left, we sat in the living room and watched him put together his Lego set, and I tried to pretend that everything had been fine. I didn't want him thinking too much about who wasn't there. But when I picked up my phone, I saw a message that changed everything. It was my sister. She posted a photo on Instagram with the caption, "Finally." It was a group shot of her, my mom, my dad, and their daughter, all smiling poolside, drinks in hand, somewhere sunny. It looked like a resort, not even the kind of place you just stop by. They'd obviously been there for a while. I stared at the photo for a long time. Not because I couldn't believe they'd lied, but because of how casually they'd done it. Not even a phone call from my mother to pretend she felt bad. Not even a card for my son. Just radio silence and then a sunny vacation post as if we didn't exist. What hit me hardest wasn't even that they skipped the party. It was realizing how long they'd been gone. I hadn't seen them in person for 2 months. Every time I called or texted, they had some excuse. Too tired, not feeling well, staying in to save money. And all the while, they were dipping into the joint account I set up for them, the one I opened when they said they were struggling. My dad had lost his job first, then my mom. My sister said she couldn't keep up with the bills after the divorce. They said they just needed help for a few months, so I helped. I set up the account, put in a few thousand, and added more when they were running low. I never asked what they spent it on. I figured they used it for groceries, maybe rent, maybe clothes for my niece. I didn't expect resort pools and frozen drinks. I didn't say anything that night. I didn't call, I didn't text. I just logged into the bank and closed the account, transferred what was left back to my main checking account, deleted the online access they had, quiet, clean, and final. The next morning, my phone rang before I even had my coffee. It was my dad. I picked it up. He asked what was wrong with the account. He said they tried to buy something and the card didn't work. I told him I had no idea. Maybe there was a problem with the bank. I kept my voice flat and acted like I was too busy to worry about it. There was a pause, and then he said he would come by tomorrow. I said I wasn't sure if I would be home. I didn't answer when he called back that night or when my sister texted. I just waited because the next day would be different, and I was done playing dumb. I didn't leave the house that day. My wife went to work, my son went to school, and I just stayed home. I didn't feel like going anywhere. I wasn't really angry, at least not in that loud, storming way. It was more like everything inside me had gone quiet, the kind of silence that comes after something breaks and you're just standing there staring at the pieces. I knew he was coming. My dad doesn't like things he can't control. The moment I closed the joint account, I knew it wasn't going to end with a phone call. So when I saw his car pull up to my house around 11 a.m., I just waited. He sat inside for a minute or two, the engine still running, before he finally got out. He knocked once, paused, and knocked again. I opened the door and leaned against the frame. He didn't say hello, didn't ask how I was, didn't even ask how his grandson's birthday went. "You emptied the account," was the first thing out of his mouth. I said yes. That was it. He waited like maybe I'd come up with a better explanation. I didn't. He asked why, and I told him I didn't think funding their vacation lifestyle was part of the original deal. He opened his mouth like he was going to argue, but then just said they needed the break, that things had been tough lately, that they were all burned out and needed to get away from it all. That was the moment I understood that they didn't feel guilty, not even a little. I asked if he thought it was okay to lie about being sick to get out of showing up for his grandson's birthday. I asked if part of getting out was pretending we didn't exist. He looked at me and said something I'll probably never forget. It wasn't about him. That's what he said, just like that. And that's when something inside me finally gave out. I didn't yell. I didn't lecture him. I just nodded once, stepped back, and closed the door quietly. I stood there for a second after it clicked shut, and I could still hear him breathing on the other side. Then I heard his footsteps, retreat, and the car start up again. An hour later, my cell phone started buzzing. My sister was calling. I let it ring. A few minutes later, voicemail. Her voice was high and fast. She was angry. She said I was being dramatic, that it was just a vacation, and that I could have at least warned her before I cut her off. She said I had embarrassed them, that they couldn't even pay for lunch because their card was declined. She said, "We're family," like it was a weapon. I didn't call her back. Then came the texts. First from her, then from my mom. One of the texts from my sister was just a screenshot of a failed card transaction with a message, "Is this what you wanted?" Then my mom called. I didn't answer, but I listened to her voicemail. She sounded calm, but I've heard that voice before. It's the one she uses when she wants to guilt you into backing down. She said she didn't understand why I was doing this, that I must be stressed or confused, that she was deeply hurt and hoped I'd come to my senses. She said it wasn't like me, that I was always the generous one, always the one she could count on. I sat in the kitchen and opened the banking app. I hadn't looked at the account in a while. I just added money when it got low. But this time, I scrolled through everything, page after page, Uber Eats, Amazon, Sephora, high-end clothing brands, hotel bookings, flights, a rental car in Scottsdale, spa fees, theme park tickets. And I realized they hadn't just lied about being sick. They hadn't planned on coming to the party because they were already gone. They probably booked this trip weeks in advance. All that talk about struggling, surviving, getting by after losing their jobs and my sister's divorce. It was garbage. They were living better than I was, and they were doing it on my money. And the worst part, they weren't even trying to hide it. Tuesday morning, I woke up to a silence that was already suspicious. After everything from the weekend and Monday, I figured someone would have shown up again, or at least tried to call from a different number. But no, just a quiet phone and an inbox that hadn't moved overnight. I should have felt relief. Instead, it felt like the eye of the storm. At 9 a.m., the first email arrived. Subject line, "Wow." It was from my sister. 3 paragraphs, no pauses, just pure vitriol and rage. She called me selfish, dramatic, and even threw in the phrase emotional terrorist, which was new. According to her, I not only humiliated the family, I traumatized my niece. Apparently her card had been declined at a boutique near her hotel, and she had to call my mother to pick up the tab. She said my niece had been embarrassed in front of everyone, as if it was a crime against humanity. I didn't respond. An hour later, my mother texted me directly. Her tone was calmer, more manipulative. She said she didn't know what I was going through, but she loved me and hoped I wasn't spiraling. That word again, as if I were the unstable one for realizing I'd been milked financially. She said they miss me, wanted to have me over for dinner, that she was making chicken pot pie, that the house didn't feel like home without me. I stared at it for a while. I closed it without answering. At noon, my dad texted, just one line. "Let's talk before you make things worse." There it was. No apology, no concern, just control. That's all it ever was with him. Everything had to be done on his terms. At 3:17 p.m., the group chat came to life. They hadn't used it since Christmas. The name was still Family Sparkling Heart Sparkles, which now felt ironic. My sister wrote first, "You really want to destroy our family over some money? Is that what you're teaching your son?" Then my mom chimed in, "We did not steal from you. We thought it was understood. We wouldn't have needed this trip if things weren't so hard here. You don't know what we've been through." My father then wrote, "This ends now. Call me." That night, I was sitting on the couch after my wife went to bed. I started scrolling through my sister's Instagram again. This time, I looked more closely at the timestamps. The spa photo was from 2 days before the birthday party. The seafood dinner, with the caption, "We needed this," was posted while we were cutting the cake. And then something hit me. I recognized the background in one of the photos. The pool chairs, the umbrella pattern, the yellow towel pattern. I'd seen them before because I paid for them. It was the same resort I took my wife to for our anniversary last year. The same one I booked for my parents' 35th anniversary as a surprise. I looked it up just to be sure, and there it was. Same resort, same luxury suite, same package. I checked the old booking email from last year. My login information still worked on the site. That's when I saw it. The booking for this trip had been made using my save profile, not just my account, my email, my old saved card information. They had literally logged into the same site I'd used, probably from my mom's tablet where I had once helped her order groceries, and used my anniversary booking as a template for their vacation. They didn't just spend my money. They reused the trip I gave them and made it their own. Around 8:45 p.m., there was a knock at the door. When I looked through the peephole, it was my niece, alone again. She was holding a paper bag and a small gift bag. I opened the door slowly. She handed them to me and said, "Mom said you'd understand." I asked if she wanted to come in, but she shook her head and said she had to get back. There was a car waiting at the curb. Inside the paper bag was a slice of the same cake my mother always made for my birthday. Chocolate with that orange frosting she calls signature. Inside the gift bag was a picture frame. It was a picture of me, my parents, my sister, and her daughter, taken 3 years ago in the backyard during another birthday party, my son's 4th. Everyone was smiling. My father had his hand on my shoulder. My sister was kneeling next to my son, the kind of photo you keep on your mantle. On the back, in my mother's handwriting, it read, "We can still be this." I stood there with the frame in my hand and the cake in the trash, thinking about all the ways people rewrite history when it's convenient, because we never were. Not really. I didn't tell my wife about the cake or the photo right away. I just left the bag on the kitchen counter and went upstairs, but she found it later that night when she came down to get water. I heard a rustling followed by silence, then the sound of the trash can lid opening. She said nothing until we were both in bed. The light was off. She was lying there looking at the ceiling the way she does when something's cooking. Then she said it. "This is all wrong." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She wasn't looking for permission to continue. You don't reward people for doing this. You don't let them slide. You don't let them crawl back like nothing happened. Still, I remained silent. "You know what the worst part is?" she asked. "It's not that they took your money. It's not that they lied. It's that they didn't even think about what it was doing to you or your son. They didn't care that he cried on his birthday. They didn't care that they embarrassed you. All they care about is that the card stopped working." She turned to me. "We should do something." I finally looked at her. "Like what? Cut them off harder? Ignore more calls?" "No," she said, sitting up now. "Not just ignore. They need to feel it. Not just in the bank account. They need to be embarrassed publicly. They need to feel what it's like to be used. That's how people like them learn. You've always been the nice one, the fixer, the one who takes care of everybody. And they've walked all over that. I'm done looking at it." She was upset in a way I hadn't seen her in a long time. Not angry, focused, like something had clicked. "You want a real lesson?" she went on. "You want to teach them something? Let's hit them where it hurts. Not money, image. You said your sister posts all over social media, poolside, designer crap, spa shots. Your dad loves his Facebook audience. Your mom still cares about what people think." I raised an eyebrow. "So," she continued, "we give them what they want, attention, but not the kind they want. We have all the bank statements, all the transactions, all the evidence. You send this, you don't have to say much, just the truth. Just enough for people to connect the dots." I just stared at her. "You post what they did the weekend they told you they were all sick, the weekend they skipped their own grandson's birthday, the vacation they paid for with your money, the photo from the party, the empty chairs." She leaned in a little. "You don't have to lie. You just tell the truth in public and then you let it go. Don't answer, don't argue, just let them watch the fallout." I hadn't even thought about that angle. I'd been so focused on cutting them off privately, on keeping things quiet and clean. But she was right. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was theft disguised as family, and they were counting on me to keep quiet, to protect the image, to not make a mess. "They humiliated you," she said. "They abandoned your child and didn't even blink. This isn't revenge, it's consequence." That word stuck with me. Consequence. I lay there for a while after she went to sleep, just staring at the ceiling, thinking, maybe she was right. Maybe it was time they saw themselves the way we saw them. I didn't go to work the next morning. I called in and said I needed a day off. No explanation, just a quiet voice and a thanks, see you tomorrow. Then I made coffee, sat down at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. My wife was getting our son ready for school. She didn't say anything, she just gave me that look, the one that says, "It's time." I started on the bank statements. I downloaded everything, every charge from the last 2 months. I highlighted a few that stood out: the hotel reservation, the car rental, the spa, the seafood place, the boutique where my niece apparently broke down when her card was declined. I cross-referenced the charges with the Instagram posts just to be sure. I even found the date and time the account hit zero, exactly 3 hours after my son blew out his candles in front of a half-empty table. Then I wrote the post. No name-calling, no drama, just the facts. My family told me they were all sick and couldn't make it to my son's birthday last weekend. We threw the party anyway. He kept asking when they were coming. That same night, my sister posted pictures of them at a resort by the pool, smiling. All 4 of them. I'd been helping them financially for 2 years, gave them access to a joint account when they said they were struggling. I thought they were using it for bills, rent, groceries. Turns out I was funding vacations. I closed the account. I cut off contact. I didn't want to make this public, but they're still sending me messages like I'm the one who crossed the line. So, here it is, not for sympathy, just so there's no confusion. I have attached a screenshot of the cake at my son's party, no guests in the background. A shot of him blowing out the candles, smiling a little too hard. Then a screenshot of my sister's poolside post. Then the hotel bill. I didn't tag anyone, I didn't say their names, I just hit post. It went up at 9:14. By 10 a.m., there were comments, dozens of them. Friends, colleagues, people I hadn't talked to in months. Everyone had something to say. Some were angry with me. Some shared similar stories of family betrayal. Some just wrote, "This is disgusting," or "unbelievable." Then the private messages began. One was from my sister's ex-husband. We'd only spoken once or twice in passing, but now he wanted to talk. Said he wasn't surprised. Said he'd been through the same thing, financial manipulation, guilt, the works. He said he was sorry I had to learn this the hard way. Another was from someone I didn't even recognize, a woman who said she'd worked with my mother a few years back. She said she always wondered how my mom could afford to take so many spiritual retreats while complaining about money at the office. I didn't answer any of them. I just watched the numbers go up. Then, just before noon, my phone lit up. First it was my sister, 10 missed calls. Then came the texts. "Take it down. You have no idea what you've done. You've just ruined our lives." Then from my dad, "This is sick. You went too far. Put it out right now." My mom didn't text. She called once. I didn't answer. Then, about an hour later, I got a message from someone I hadn't heard from in almost 15 years. An old friend of my dad's. He just said, "Saw your post. I always knew something was wrong. You did the right thing." That's when I realized it was never just about money. They built a whole image around being good people who had fallen on hard times, the sympathetic story, the struggling but loving family. They wore it like a badge, and I had just ripped it off publicly. By evening, my sister had deactivated her Instagram. My dad shut down his Facebook. My mom sent another message, "I can't believe you did this to us. We're your family." I stared at the screen for a long time before I replied. Just 4 words, "You did it first." By the next morning, it wasn't just spreading. It was a wildfire. Someone had taken screenshots of the post and shared it on a local community group. Then it hit another, and then another. Apparently, people love a real-life soap opera, especially when it's happening in their own backyard. The comments weren't kind. There were people who'd known my parents for years. Others had gone to school with my sister. A few even remembered my niece from soccer practice. Now everyone had something to say. Around noon, someone dug up my sister's TikTok where she'd been posting relatable mom content for months. She bragged about budgeting, mental health, being a single mom just trying her best. That same week, she was lounging by the pool on someone else's dime. The comments turned wild. People asked if this was how she was budgeting. One video was flooded with the word thief over and over. By the afternoon, her entire account was gone. My mom didn't fare much better. Turns out she'd been quietly running a small business page for her handmade candles. She used to talk about how they brought her peace. Someone left a review calling her a fraud. Others followed. By 6 p.m., the business was shut down and the page deleted. And my dad. He'd been working part-time for a year at a small real estate company. Not officially on the payroll, more like a favor from a friend. This friend had apparently seen the post. He called me. "I had no idea," he said. "He always made it sound like you were the one leaning on them. He said you were struggling." I didn't say much. I just listened. I can't have someone like that attached to my name. I've got clients. By the end of the day, my dad was gone. That night, my sister showed up at my door. I didn't answer. I watched her through the peephole. She stood there in a hoodie, arms crossed, pacing, crying at one point, whether it was real or fake. I didn't care anymore. She stood there for 10 minutes. Then she slammed something against the door, a crumpled envelope, and walked away. Inside was a handwritten letter. It started with, "How could you?" and ended with, "We needed you." The middle was all excuses. I didn't read it twice. The next week was quiet. Too quiet. They weren't just embarrassed, they were ostracized. Friends dropped them. Distant relatives stopped returning their phone calls. Their church, where they'd always put on their best face, stopped asking them to volunteer. People whispered when they showed up at the grocery store. My niece was pulled out of school. Maybe it was shame. Maybe they just couldn't afford gas. They'd lost everything. And the worst part, the part one never expected, was that I didn't feel good about it. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel powerful. I felt finished. Whatever part of me used to care, that part was gone. The last I heard, they were staying with an old friend of my mom's 2 towns over. Someone who hadn't seen the post yet, or maybe just didn't care. But I knew it wouldn't last. People always find out. I never took the post down. I never said anything more. I just let the truth hang in the air right where it belonged. Because sometimes, the best revenge is to let people destroy themselves and give them the silence they finally deserve.